favorite time. I get to bang the gavel. All right, I call the January 14th, 2025 Colonial School Board meeting to order. Please rise and join me as we recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Agenda items. Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda? All right.
Make a motion, we accept the agenda as presented.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Or, I'm sorry, as moved by Mr. Laws, seconded by Mr. Handy. Now, are there any questions or comments from the board? All right, no questions or comments. All those in favor, please signify with saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion's passed. And now is the time that we move in the board meeting for our celebration of the E in the power of we. We'll begin with our student board member, Ms. Ladune Akinrolio, to provide us with her report on how I pronounced her name.
I feel like every month we're improving. One day you're really gonna get there. It's like you have the African accent too and everything.
Would you graduate?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe like
Yeah.
in June. I feel like we'll get to that point.
Ladoon, don't put any pressure on him.
No pressure.
That's a short time.
I have faith.
You have it?
Thank you. All right, what do you got for us, Ladune?
Alright, so on like the social side, the social life at Penn, just getting back into business after going on break and being blessed with the extra day of break into the snow day, which I really appreciated. Things are still happening. The senior committee is having a prom fashion show / talent show in February, and just today they had auditions, and I can say I'm pretty excited. It's gonna be like a new thing, but hopefully a good thing that will continue throughout the years. I'm hearing lots of talk of many seniors talking about locking in for college apps or just solidifying what they plan to do after high school, which is always exciting. And I'm excited to see where the wind takes everyone in our class for the next few months. When it comes to athletics, winter sports are definitely up and going. If you say after school, you'll see the swim team waiting for the bus, indoor track running around, and all the basketball teams practicing, and the cheer team practicing as well. I like to think that sports are a significant part of student life at Penn, and the amount of student involved in sports really reflects that. This past Saturday, our boys basketball team had their first game, a home game, and won. And as someone who's at the Bob in 2023 when we lost to Sally, seeing us beat them last Saturday it was very healing for me. It was awesome, and the game was really great too. And our school is also implementing new security measures. We had like a metal detector, and we can only bring small bags. And I mean, it works because nothing bad happened. But it was just really interesting to see all the new procedures we're putting into place. And on the academic side, the marking period just ended, which means we're officially halfway done with the school year. And as a senior, it's kind of bittersweet thinking that I only have 2 marking periods left. But I'm kind of glad. I'm ready. I'm ready to be, a graduated senior. Also, all students at Penn should have completed like their benchmarks. So for reading, it's like the STAR and the RISE assessment, and for math, it's like the iReady diagnostic. And I think there's also RISE. And the district uses that data for a lot of things, I'm pretty sure. So hopefully the data looks good and it will contribute to more learning at Penn. And that's all I have for this month.
Thanks, Ladoon. I think appreciate the in-depth update there, and first of all, with respect to the benchmarking that's going on at the high school, that's something that I think those words don't get often said in the same sentence, let alone in public by a student at a board meeting. And second, with respect to the basketball game on Saturday, it was the first time that the William Penn administrative team utilized the metal detector system and the new entry process for the boys basketball games and actually indoor events. And by all accounts, that process played out the way it was supposed to. It was a smoothly run operation. To follow up, we did receive a shout out from the sports organization that was covering the event, either filming it or covering it live or streaming it. They just put out have to forgive me. It's either a tweet or something on Facebook or Instagram. I don't know. It's just on the internet. And it says another great game and atmosphere today at William Penn. Packed house, no issues, band, cheerleaders, and plenty of kids, coaches, and teams from other schools in the building, the way it should be. So to reaffirm your sentiment that it was a great opportunity, and yeah, it always helps when you feed salads. So,
Yes.
thank you.
To confirm, it was a tweet. It was yeah. I get it, yeah. X. I don't even know what they call it. I don't know.
See?
I'm too old. It's Twitter and tweet for me. So, all right. To continue our E in the power of we storytelling, I'm going to turn over the mic to Colonial's Public Information Officer, Miss Lauren Wilson. Miss Wilson, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. PQ, and to everyone here in Colonial Nation, good evening. We're going to begin with staff recognitions. In December, First State Educate honored McCullough Middle School Mustangs. At the nonprofit's end-of-year celebration, the organization honored Principal Hyacinth Lewis for her work in family engagement. She was on hand to speak about the nonprofit's work at McCullough and to receive her award. We are proud of Ms. Lewis, who knows Mustangs run together. Ms. Lewis, would you come forward? We'd like to get a photo.
All right, 3, 2. Good. Thank you.
Congratulations. Next, we celebrate the Equity Practitioner Program. EAP seeks to equip educators at every level of the organization with the knowledge, skills, ability, and resources to successfully lead equity efforts at the school and community levels. Those who participated in this robust 6-month program are Talea Haynes, Elizabeth Gambudas, Aliyah Thomas, Paige Chalfant, Patrick DeBudo, and Elizabeth Harris. Would those educators come forward?
Come on right over here.
He's not here. Ready?
Am I?
You're good. 1, 2. Okay, step out.
Next, the Office of Extended Learning would like to take a moment to recognize the exceptional dedication and hard work of our 3 reading specialists, Dawn Manlove from Cary Downey, Jen McLaughlin from Newcastle, and Gail Cooksey from Southern Elementary School. These educators have been instrumental in supporting the students and have generously committed their time after school to provide targeted reading instruction, resulting in tremendous growth for the students receiving extended school day services. We are proud to report that the students participating in this program have shown an average growth of 34.17 points in their STAR reading scores through the course of the first cycle. Additionally, the average attendance rate for these students on a weekly basis was 96.3%. This impressive attendance rate and assessment growth can be attributed to the strong relationships of our teachers who have built relationships with the students both inside and outside of their regular school day. These meaningful connections foster an environment of trust and motivation, encouraging students to consistently engage in their learning. We look forward to seeing the growth of our students and the after-school program in Cycle 2. We'd like those educators to come forward.
3, 2.
Congratulations all. And this month, we come together to recognize and celebrate a big part of the E in We, the dedicated members of our school board. Your commitment, vision, and hard work shapes the future of our schools and helps build a brighter tomorrow for our students. Your efforts to create an environment where students can thrive and reach their full potential is greatly appreciated. During this School Board Appreciation Month, we thank you, school board members, for your service, your leadership, and passion for education. You make a difference daily, and we are truly grateful for everything that you do for the Colonial School District. Finally, as you know, community is an all-important pillar in the E of our Power of We mantra, and that's why we are recognizing one of our major community partners, Seeds of Greatness. Seeds of Greatness Bible Church made the holidays brighter for 300 Colonial students. Thanks to their Blessed to be a Blessing initiative, students from Carey Downey, Castle Hills, Eisenberg, and George Reed received gifts valued at $100 each. With the help from family crisis therapists and counselors from the schools, the students were told to write a wish list, and much to their delight, those wishes were fulfilled. The students' families were also treated to a dinner at the church. While the monetary commitment from the church members was huge and greatly appreciated, this board recognizes that the love and support shown to our students in need was simply priceless. We thank you for being an important part of the E in We. And we have 2 members from Seeds, if you come forward.
Right in front. All right. 3, 2, 1. Good. Thank you.
Thank you, and that concludes our recognitions for this evening.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wilson. So now is the time, the board meeting, for board members and the executive secretary to discuss items of information and topics from our participation in various professional organizations. We do have these updates and documents listed in the agenda. You can see the legislative committee, next meeting is February 5th. Executive committee, next meeting is Wednesday, January 15th, so tomorrow. And then I do believe that Dr. Menzer has an update for DASA.
Yeah, just, well, it wasn't, didn't make the time to print for the agenda. The Delaware Administrative, the DASA has a vacancy currently for its executive director. For those of you who are not aware, Tammy Croce is retiring soon. I know it's maybe not the exact end of the school year, but it's September. But they've been posted the position. It just literally went out live this afternoon, and so they'll be looking for a new executive director for DASA, which is the group that represents school administrators across the state in Dover in legislative activity on a year-round basis. I just thought I'd provide that update. The rest is as written in the board agenda.
Thank you, Dr. Menzer. Are there any questions or point of interest board members would like to discuss? No? All right. That being said, move on to the ever popular public comment, which it is so popular that we don't have any submitted. So besides that.
So at this point in the agenda, having no public comment, those who have other obligations or would like to retire for the evening to get ready for work, this is an opportunity where we'll take a pause, for you to exit, then we'll resume our agenda. And you're also free to stay and enjoy. We have a presentation on the school budget, the district budget, shortly. Why are they, Ms. Falcon, did you see that? And we have a construction update, yeah, I mean, so if you want to take a moment, Thank you for coming out, those of you who are recognized.
Oh, you guys are so sweet. I'm gonna have to get more basins.
I want Paige's friends. They all came out with flowers. It's like a posse out there. That was great. Miss Lewis, you're welcome. Miss Lewis, you're welcome that we took a break so you could, gotta get him to bed, yes. Hopefully he's having a good time.
It's the moment every month when the board's self-esteem drops, right? Realizing no one's actually here to see us. It's okay. Yeah, I know it is. Okay. All right. Moving on, the next agenda item is the consent agenda. The items listed under the consent agenda have gone through board review, including documentation concerning these items that have been provided to all board members and the public in advance. Items in the consent agenda generally include routine personnel and business office actions and updates, as well as approval of previous meeting minutes and education-related items such as choice and student placements. Do I hear a motion?
I move that we approve all consent agenda, I move that we approve all consent agenda items as presented.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
One second. Okay. All right, and as moved by Dr. Dorsey, seconded by Mr. Handy, are there any questions or comments from the board? With no questions or comments, all those in favor, please signify with saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, nay. All right. Moves on. One of these microphones are getting nasty feedback. No? Sorry. Try it. All right,
Figured that out.
All right.
yeah,
Good shot.
guess
We
it's
can
me. All right, next up on the agenda is the updates and action items. All right.
First up, we have the last update for the strategic plan. As the board knows, we're in the next to last year of the strategic plan. We have one more year next year. After providing this update, we're going to begin to talk about the transition and the review of this plan to the new plan for the next 5 years. So we feel that the board now and the community have gotten pretty solid updates for the last 6 months that are out there now for review, and know that the conversations that we'll be having moving forward will relate to those items. And that'll be, Dr. Jones will be providing those updates on an as needed basis when there's things to report out. The strategic plan committee met.
We meet tomorrow.
They meet tomorrow, so tomorrow's the first meeting to kind of get back into the mix. The next item is also an information item, but we also have folks here from our facilities department to respond and answer questions.
Dr. Menzer, who's part of the strategic plan committee? Who's represented?
So all parties are represented. When we created the first plan, it was district level, building level, parents, community members, and we intend to replicate that again. I'm gonna state that one area in which we did not have representation with was operations. So this year, as we're transitioning to begin creating our new plan, we're gonna make sure that we include them as well.
Okay. You have student voice also?
That's a good touch. When we talk about when we reflect tomorrow, our agenda is to look at the process first of creating the plan. What we did in the past, what went well, what are some things we need to tweak, and that's the tweaking part, that's where we can add that in.
Okay.
Thanks, Dr. Dorsey. Any other questions about the strategic plan process? Okay, Okay, the next agenda item, as the board and the community are aware, in February, the district approved a capital referendum, and as a result of that commitment from the community, the district has implemented a campaign to provide updates on a quarterly basis. And the 4 prongs of that update are going to include things such as education of terminology and timeline of how capital projects work. The other one is going to be monitoring the work. We have a group of community members and employees who get a monthly status report from the operations department or division. And then this is an opportunity for us to inform the board, and then this is a static update for the community as well. That anyone can go on the website and see where we are with our latest capital project based on the referendum that we had last spring. You can see the update is in your board docs for January. We have with us the Director of Operations, Drew Moffett, and our Supervisor of Facilities, Mr. Steve Johnson. I know Mr. PQ and Mr. Laws are both on the capital campaign, the capital project oversight committee or monitoring committee, and they met last week. So if there's any questions or comments, now's the time to kind of share them or make an observation or ask a question.
And I'm good. I've gotten all my questions out for them. I will say, being on the committee, they have explained everything to us. Things are looking like they're all going in the right directions for everything we've seen. Even got updates in regards to Leach, that things are moving along, so that's good as well. And that's, you know, obviously I'm open to all the board members too if they have any questions about it.
And we do have parents and community members on that committee, that group as well.
Yes.
So,
You're still looking for some volunteers too, right, Drew?
Yes, we would love to have an educator or two and another set, another parent or two as well. The more representation we get, the better. We do have both a husband, Mr. and Mrs. Gordy are part of our group, representing us and had several different students through, and then of course board members and several different.
So if anybody's, is there still the application or on the website somewhere?
The application is still available online and it's live, and I get those updates to be able to review as they go through, yes.
All right, so if someone's looking to get involved, they can find it on our district website, or, reach out to Andrew Moffett, Director of Operations, and he can get you connected with the application. Always looking for more people to be involved.
Gabe, can we reshare that link so that we can get that back up in front of everybody? Because I definitely think it's kind of tough when you say we have 2 parents, but they're both on the same Zoom link. Yeah. Fighting over the mute button and everything. So.
Chris.
Yes, sir.
I have a question. Are there building a water tower on the Leach property?
That would be a question to ask Mr.
That's a
Moffett.
water tower that's going up there, but I think that's being funded by RTD.
Is it on the same piece of property?
No.
Jason.
Is that the one that's going to be directly behind it?
Yeah.
That's a
Is that what that
different
is?
property. There's actually 3 parcels along that stretch, and that's actually 2 parcels away from us. So that water tower is nothing associated with Colonial. It's a separate property owner.
Actually, Brad, that's the best building.
Yeah. But you are seeing it clearly go up if you're driving up and down Route 1. It's pretty tall at this point in time in the actual construction process. What's that?
It won't take them long to put that up.
Does not. It took them longer to lay it out and put all the stakes up than it is for actually building it, that's for sure.
Thanks, Drew.
Yep.
The next presentation is presentation of the budget and seeking the board's approval. And for that, I'll turn it over to Emily Falcon, our Chief Operating and Financial Officer, who is going to be presenting up on the screen here.
That's my favorite part of the month. Right?
Just waiting for him to stop tapping before I took it. Okay. Good evening, everybody. Tonight I'm going to be presenting our FY25 final budget for the year. And I've got tech support with Mr. Joe Kite, so I'm just going to say Joe next when he should go to the next slide. So, as a refresher or an overview, this is our financial plan for the 24-25 school year. It takes us this long to get to the final budget because we do need to wait for enrollment to be certified. That's how most of our funding is determined from the state, and that usually takes, certification takes until the beginning of November, and then allocations and so forth have to be calculated, so that's why we do this. In the middle of the year, we have been operating under a board-approved preliminary budget since the beginning of the fiscal year. And we did have the Citizen Financial Oversight Committee reviewed this last Tuesday evening on the 7th, and they recommended approval. Just walking through the revenue details quickly, you will see that our state revenue increased over FY24, but I do have a budget broken out between discretionary revenue and restricted revenue, and we saw basically no increase in discretionary state revenue. Discretionary meaning that we have control over the budget decisions we're making, and it's not specifically programmed to a certain use by the state. So the entire increase is due to increased investments that the state was providing, salaries being a big piece. There was an increase in our opportunity fund allocation, and we actually did re-qualify for a position in the Student Success Block Grant, which bumped that allocation up as well. Local revenue is only up 1% from last year. That may seem like it doesn't make sense given the referendum. However, we are still, some of the other revenue sources were adjusted. Our indirect cost receipts, are coming down because we don't have the ESSER funds that we're drawing indirect costs from. Our choice billing did go up, so that's pushing money out of the revenue category. And then, even though the need for reserve funds decreased, we are still pulling from our reserve funds and deficit spending this budget, partly due to the staggered implementation of the increase that we saw through the community. So, but we did see overall 1% growth in our local revenue stream. Federal revenue, the 12% decrease looks staggering. Most of that, again, is due to an adjusted projection of competitive federal grants. There was a placeholder that I was expecting at the beginning of the year, and I've adjusted that downward. Our entitlement grants, which really does drive kind of our yearly, we rely on them for ongoing programs and ongoing positions. They were down on average 1%, but not nearly as big of a jump, or big of a decrease, I should say, as the total, which really was impacted by that competitive federal budget line. Thank you, Joe. Just to walk you through our state reduction plan, this is for folks that may not remember, back in FY 2018, the state was experiencing some economic downturn, revenue forecasts were down, and public education was hit with a $26 million cut to our Division II, which is our discretionary state resources that come through. The cut was taken in our Division II line, but because the needs of districts vary up and down the state, we are given flexibility to absorb that cut through moving funds around and kind of putting the money back into that discretionary area from other budget lines. So these are the areas on the left-hand side of the slide where we basically are moving the money from where it was allocated into that discretionary pot of Division II money, because that was where the cut was taken at the state level. So the 13 teacher units that you see here, that does not represent jobs that were cut. These are long-standing vacancies that we have not been able to fill, and so if we didn't use them in the reduction plan, we would essentially leave that state money on the table. So this does give us a good way to capitalize on the fact that we do have some persistent vacancies that we're struggling with still, and move that $1 million from what would basically be unspent into our Division II to allow us to utilize it. And then you see the other programmatic lines, excuse me, that are captured there. I do believe there is one line that you can't see on the slide that is, there you go, our Division II energy funds for Leach. Leach does have a portion that's allocated because they sit in a separate budget unit. They do have a separate total, excuse me, so that constitutes Leach's contribution to the budget reduction.
Can we scroll up a little bit to see that total?
Yep. And you will see the edit mark.
So that
It's-
you can see the total on the left.
It's 1.7.
Up.
Yep, I see.
Gotta
Yeah.
go up above the little pencil there.
It's 1.7. The fact that that amount continues to decrease is a byproduct of the fact that our share proportionately of units statewide is shrinking. So other districts are growing. As you see growth, your portion of the $26 million cut that we have to absorb gets redistributed. So this is an area where our declining enrollment actually benefits us in this way, that our give back amount or reduction amount is shrinking.
But this doesn't hurt the services we're able to provide, right?
No, while I will say we would love to be able to fill some of these vacancies, again, it is, we are posting the positions and we are filling them, filling what we can. We do have other vacancies even beyond the 13 positions that are represented here. So this does not represent a cut in services, no. Any other questions on that before we move? No?
Starting next year is when we'll actually see a replenishment to the reserve funds. Is that correct? We'll be on that cycle for the next couple of years?
Depending on how our expenditure growth goes, we are going to be bringing in additional revenue. The 10 cents we're bringing in next year is about equal to what our deficit spending is. So it may need to be the third year before we kick into actual putting money back into reserves. All right, next slide for me, Joe. All right, so just to talk about expenditures, and again, this is kind of a restatement of what I just said. We are still deficit spending despite the referendum success. We are incredibly grateful to our community and to the staff and everyone who put so much hard work into that effort. But we knew going into it that, in order to make it as manageable and sustainable for our community, we did need to stagger it so that impact could be mitigated. As a result, we do still have a deficit that we're carrying for FY25. So we are still sort of in a very, belt tightening. I shouldn't say tightening because it's been tight, but we haven't kind of, we haven't we haven't put our Thanksgiving Day pants on yet, right? We're not at the all-you-can-eat buffet in terms of our ability to kind of take on new things. So we're still looking at, ways to really maximize and leverage the restricted resources that we have access to in order to get as much done with the resources that we have as we can. You can see, the way we're allocating or utilizing our reduction plan helps to maximize that. We continue to go after grants that don't represent new work necessarily, but more resources to help us do existing work. When we have those opportunities, we're definitely doing that. Again, tightening on position management and making sure that we're really looking at a lot of those things. And then because the opportunity funding is an area where we have seen some year-over-year growth with those investments, we are really trying to utilize all of those funds in strategic ways to get things done that we know are priorities for the district. Next slide, Joe. So despite the continued tight fiscal climate, we do want to make some strategic investments in areas where we know, we have need or we just want to be able to allow for some additional flexibility and managing demands. School budgets, they continue to be right-sized based on enrollment, so you will see that the percentage changes are, vary from school to school. There was an increase in the per pupil amount that was used for the budgets, but they were basically still calculated using enrollment. So, if there was a decline in enrollment, then you could see, I think there was a school or two that might have had a decrease, but that was an enrollment change versus a per pupil amount change. Just a couple things to note that are, not significant changes necessarily, but our marketing and public communications budget, we are collapsing. They existed as two separate line items. That department has been formed into one overarching department, so to give them ease of spending, we are blending those two budgets together. And they did get an increase to reflect the added responsibilities that they've taken on recently. We know that our buildings are aging and continue to need to be invested in, so we have put additional dollars towards our maintenance and custodial service budgets. And then we did, you do see the creation of a new budget line for the CEA tuition reimbursement program. That was the result of the last round of negotiations with our teachers union. We agreed to create that program. There was a work group put together through the fall that put the details around that program together, and it was actually just approved, I think right before I was made aware of its approval last week. So we were able to get that added into the final budget to reflect that commitment for our teachers union this year. We also have information on our detail that gets more detailed out. Nutrition, food costs and supply costs do appear as though they are leveling out a little bit. They were kind of stuck in a high inflation level, still coming out of COVID, even as late as last year. That does appear to be leveling out a bit. But really, the increase there is being driven pretty heavily by the increased investment in, or the increased projection in personnel expense. And I didn't mention it, but the health insurance premium increase that the state, that we experienced through the state is part of what is pushing some of the personnel costs up. There was not a gigantic salary bump, but the health insurance premiums, the cost that there was an increased cost at the employee level, but there was also an employer side where when we're paying into that health insurance fund on behalf of our employees, that's costing more as well. So some of the increases in our salary lines are reflected because of that. Transportation, I hesitated to put it into the presentation because I didn't want to jinx it, but homeless transportation costs are actually trending below where I would expect them to be for the first time, I think, in my entire tenure here. So I'm hoping that stays through the fall or through the spring, and we can see a little bit of relief in that continued solid growth year over year. And you can see in how the budget lines are moving that we continue to see a shift between the runs being covered by contractors and the runs that we're covering with district personnel. So growth for the overall transportation budget is at 1%, which is a nice low number for transportation. So I'm hoping that we last through the spring with that.
Is that with new current lower fuel prices, or is that with previously higher predicted fuel prices?
So I looked at where our fuel spend was, through the middle of this year. I think a fuel reduction would not have been factored into any of the funding that we would have received. But even though it doesn't seem like it, fuel is not a gigantic expense in transportation. So a decrease may not move our total number very significantly. And then Leach, we are looking at a fairly big increase for Leach. They did see a little bit of a bump in enrollment over year from where they were last year, but they're also, we are seeing transportation expenses are being included in their budget directly now versus being housed in the Colonial side of the budget and then billed back to Leach at the end of the year. So, you know, right-sizing that number for the transportation cost at Leach is part of the variation there. And then there's also a personnel increase, again, going back to those health insurance costs. But we're also seeing that there is a greater use of contractor resources at Leach. This is a strategic decision to make sure that we are kind of maximizing our ability to utilize contracted resources as opposed to employee resources in areas where we have a little bit more flexibility with funding. So moving those expenses to Leach gives us a little bit more flexibility with those type of contracts. So that doesn't you know, point at runaway costs necessarily, but some of it is what would have been personnel expense is now showing up as contracted expense under general district.
You said the Leach enrollment has increased.
Yes.
What percentage has it?
I don't have a percentage in my head. I think it was a total of about 4 or 5 students, which for a school, you know, I think they went from 79 to 84 or something.
Ginny proudly told me yesterday they're seeing 100 on its way. They're at 99. They're just under 100 now.
Okay, so then my numbers are off, but yeah, it was.
Are some of those tuition based or are they?
They're all.
They all are.
I'm pretty sure.
Jimmy just texted 98.
I was waiting to see how quick that answer was gonna come.
So she was bluffing about the 100. Okay, I'll make sure I talk to her
But
about
you
it.
said most of them are tuition based?
All
All of them.
students,
All
all
of
of them, whether they are Colonial students that we're utilizing our tuition funds for, our tax dollars for, or we're billing out other districts, every single student at Leach is tuition eligible.
So we're talking about 98 from mid-80s then previously? That's
Yeah, again, I don't have the numbers in my head, I just know that there was,
Gabe will get a
there was,
text in a minute.
Thank
yeah,
Yeah,
we will.
Ginny will let me know.
I was serving that up to Ginny. I knew what I was doing.
She said, hey, one moved. I wasn't bluffing.
All right.
I love
Let's slide.
virtual engagement. I mean, that's something that's
Hey,
great.
engagement's engagement.
Take it.
We know our principals are watching.
There you go. All right, so other information that is included in the final budget document, we do have information included about the construction funds that were appropriated from the state for Leach, as well as the allocations for the 3 schools receiving funding from our approved CNs as a result of the February referendum. They are not included in the budget numbers again because they are kind of isolated in the construction world and would make the growth numbers artificially high or low. Even though the ESSER 3 grant has officially, we can't spend anything new, we did receive a late liquidation approval through Delaware DOE and US Ed. We do have the ability to continue spending down 2 or 3 of those budget lines until January of 2026. So that information is included since there will be spend down going on in those lines. Detail on our property taxes, which the board also sees in July when we do our tax warrant, and that hasn't changed since. And then we do have information on our enrollment as well as unit generation. We did actually see another decline in enrollment this year, but because of the steady increase in the level of need that our population is experiencing, our units increased.
What was the decrease? Like how many students did we lose? Around.
Close to 200. Close to 200, yeah. And then the information on positions and the position entitlement report from the state showing what they allocate versus how we've filled those positions. Next slide. So in summary, again, we are keeping a focus on bolstering retention and recruitment for staff, especially educators, while we're also trying to, continue to put engaging program in front of all students. To restate, we're not using nearly as much of our reserve as we did in 24, but we have not quite closed that deficit spending gap. So we do still need to maintain a very tight fiscal control over growth and new projects. Discretionary budget growth is under 1% for this budget. So the other thing that is driving the continued need for conservative decision-making in this area, we have two big things going on. We have a new governor taking the reins, as well as the composition of our General Assembly has changed, the leadership down there has changed, and we don't know how exactly the agendas of those bodies might impact our funding streams. And we have reassessment knocking on our door that will be effective in July of 25, and how that plays out in the community and how that may have an impact on us. We just want to continue to be thoughtful and conservative in managing our resources going forward to ensure that we can be as sustainable as possible and keep putting, keep prioritizing putting programming in front of our kids. So, any questions? Because that's my next. Yep, there you go.
Any questions from any of the board members? All right, with no questions, Ms. Falcon, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
All right, with that being said, do I hear a motion?
Make a motion, we approve the budget as presented.
Okay, and do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, as moved by Mr. Laws, seconded by Dr. Dorsey. Are there any questions or comments from the board? All right, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. All right, 2025 final budget is approved. And moving on.
So the last update and action item is, before we bring forward to the board the proposed calendar for 25-26 school year, I wanted to give the board, and with the help of Nikki, Holly, and Emily, just a kind of a recap of how we got to this calendar that we'll be presenting. Primarily because the process that we went through was different than every year prior to this in terms of how the proposed calendar was developed. I want to just say, in the past, there was a calendar committee made up of educators, operations folks, parents, district folks, various central office administrators. There were, on the list, there were upwards of 15 to 20 people on this committee. They met 3 to 4 times a year, starting in like April up until October, where they then would present calendar proposals to the leadership team, and then the leadership team would then provide feedback. Then they would go back to their committee, and then by February we would have something to present to the board. Over the last several years, we found that participation and engagement in that process by all the stakeholders at the table was waning, and we didn't feel we were getting the feedback we needed in order to make a valid recommendation. Last year, the back and forth was back and forth for a while, and it was difficult at best to get meetings scheduled, feedback, surveys responded to. There were all the tricks of the trades of Zoom and doodle polls and all this stuff trying to get people's opinion really was not getting a cross-representation of all of our stakeholders around what was being brought forward to be decided upon to implement. So last year, I think it was around May, the executive leadership team said we're going to stop using the calendar committee, which in of itself sounds really easy and like a great idea. But you don't realize how many things come out of a calendar committee when you just never really like who waits for what to come from who sends what email, when what decision was made and how it was made. And so this year, what we started was we started with a base calendar for where the holidays fell. That was the traditional calendar for this year, the way it was structured. The senior level leadership group, the four of us here at the table, sat and built out the skeleton. And then because since it's been a while now, we have much stronger relationships with all of our bargaining groups and all of our stakeholders. Each of us in our own worlds took the draft and just started going around and talking to people about what we thought we would do and how we would do it. And we started in August. I know I had parents, and I worked with the CEA, the teacher union. Holly, you were...
I talked to the paras, the custodians, the nutrition, and the transportation, Drew and I.
And I had the directors of the schools division.
And Emily was involved with operations.
Yeah, operations conversations.
So we came to the place now where we feel, and Kim, the president of CEA is here. You were on the calendar committee, and you went through it this year. So maybe share with the board, if you don't mind. I don't want to put you on the spot. I mean, you're sitting there twiddling away, you know, whoa! Kind of late and wrong, but if you have anything to add.
No, I was on both, and I would agree with Dr. Menzer that the calendar committee was not as effective as it needed to be. My bargaining unit is a large one, and having only my voice on the committee, it was kind of hard to always portray the needs of all 800 roughly teachers. In this format that we went through this year, both myself and our members felt like we had a bigger voice, able to get our opinions across and our questions answered, things like that, to make sure that everybody understands why the calendar is what it is.
And the other thing that was good about this format is that all of the other bargaining groups were represented by their supervisors, right?
Yeah.
So they didn't have the general members. There were no transportation, no custodians, no nutrition workers. That they were Drew and or Amanda or someone of a supervisory level was on that committee. There were no.
Yeah, there were no.
None of
Now
the
there were.
bargaining,
This year, this time there
right,
was,
because
but in
we
the
met
past
with
they
the
weren't.
groups, right.
Because many times those meetings happened while they were working, because they were after school,
Or
they were gone.
Because when we held the calendar committee
Yeah.
meetings, it was for the teachers and the paras.
Drew also
Yeah.
was involved in those as well. And,
Right.
we tried to get as many people involved and as many eyes on the calendar as possible to bring forward what we believe is going to be one that we hope the board will consider and approve. The process, understanding the process, is important when it comes to you. So I felt like it was important to share. If you have any questions, I mean, I'm not gonna like tell you what's on the calendar yet. I mean, I could tip my hand a little bit. There's like no real uber surprises. I mean, it might be the last potential 2-week winter break because of the way the holidays fall for quite some time.
The snow days extra at the end.
Well, our resident calculator over here, Miss Leary, she takes this calendar and checks us against the hours that are required. We always have a little bit of extra. So if we need a snow day, we can do a snow day and the students can take a break, but staff always owes 188 days. That's one that we can't avoid, but we're always careful to keep a little bit of cushion in there, and we do also add 5 days, contingent days at the end, that if we burn our built-in cushion, we still have 5 days that'll be added on if we needed to. That would be the Snowmageddon year, when that was the year, like there was like 14 snow days, I think. I mean, it was something crazy. I don't feel like we're gonna get that this year, but no, that's all built in. The facilities team back there is knocking wood, crossing fingers, rubbing the rabbit foot, hoping that whatever I just said does not turn out to be true. I think the one, that's one thing I will say, that there is definitely the appropriate number of hours for students and days for staff. I think the one other, outside of the potential 2-week winter break, there is going to be a modification or a different look on the Thanksgiving week, where we will still have parent conferences, but we're adding an additional staff work day in that week, but taking a day that's traditionally a holiday and going to be converting it. It's going to become a floating holiday for all employees that will be on the calendar. So it's going to look a little different. It's still going to be the holiday, but it's going to just operationally, it's a little bit of a challenge. But it's something that will value. We'll share a little bit of that story when we get to it. Those are the two big highlights, I think, that and the potential for the 2-week. One other change with the calendar is the way it's going to look. I hate to pull a colonial, but it's cherry and black now, right? Like, it's going to be, whenever a parent looks at this calendar, if you see cherry or any version of red or a black square, there's no school for your child that day. It's simple. Before, we have like some shades of pink, we had some fuchsia, we had some yellow, we had a couple blues. Like we now, because we when talking to the parents, what I learned, who would know in this day and age when I didn't know what a tweet was, but a static a static PDF that you all approve in February. Apparently, as soon as that goes live, families print and put on their refrigerator. Like, they go old school. So we tried to make old school, simple as possible. So that's another feature where again, it came from parents. Gabe has a parent group that I presented to. So it's going to have a little bit of a different look and feel to it. We're excited about it, and we do believe that it'll meet the needs of our students as well as our employees, because we do feel that the floating holiday does help. Any other questions? All right, that concludes updates and action items.
I miss approval for that. It's already approved.
No, that's not a count. Yeah, you don't have to approve. Yeah, no, I don't have the calendar
Adjournment now.
in front of me. Yeah, you're up to adjournment.
Well, thank you. I do want to say, with the month of January, it was stated, but I myself would like to thank the board as a School Board Appreciation Month. I'm very blessed to be able to lead a board that is so unified in so many things and helpful and caring, and they're here for all the right reasons. And there's a reason people come up to us constantly and compliment our board, and I think it's because of the different strengths that we all have. So I thank you all for serving on the board, and I hope you continually keep doing it, as long as Ted has done it for 40, 50 plus years. No.
Close to 20.
We've seen it in the typewritten papers.
At least it's not handwritten.
Yeah. But no, thank you very much for the amazing board we have. We wouldn't be anywhere without you guys, so we appreciate you. And that being said, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, and I heard a first and a second, I'm assuming, from Mr. Handy. There you go, first from Mr. Walls. Any questions or comments? Nope. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you very much.